One of the first things we want to learn, and something we're going to use throughout this course, is just to define what a function is. Okay, so that's where we're going to start off this section. So I've got a full definition here, but here's what I want you to focus on. A function makes sure that each input maps to exactly one output. So not 0 outputs, not 2 outputs. If you've got a single input, it should go to exactly one output. That's what makes something a function. The rest of this is just some terminology we're going to use. So the input variable is called the independent variable. The outputs are going to be called our dependent variable. And then if you want to talk about all the inputs that get used, that's called the domain. And then the set of all the outputs that's used is called the range. Okay, so that's some terminology we're going to use over and over again in this course. To help us make sure we understand that definition though, I just want to look at a basic example of a function. And it's probably not going to look like other functions you've seen before. Okay, so you're probably more used to seeing something like y equals 3x plus 2, right? But instead, we're going to look at just kind of a verbal description of some times and temperatures. So we've got a rule here where we're going to use as our input the time of day, measured in the number of hours after midnight. And our output is going to be the temperature, measured in degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, so these are our inputs, or you could say that this is our independent variable. And these are our outputs, which means we could call that the dependent variable. So x is the independent variable, y is the dependent variable. And now if we're going to try to decide if this is a function or not, basically we need to make sure that each of these inputs goes to exactly one output. So the input 9, yep, just one output. The input 10, yep, just one output. And it's true for all these guys. So this is an example of a function because each input gets mapped to exactly one output. Now another way we could look at this function is I could just take each of these points and put them on a scatter plot. So we've got the x-coordinate and the y-coordinate. So for example, 9, 42 right there. Or I could take 10, 46, so 10, 46. And if I plot each of those on a scatter plot, that's another way of looking at that same function. Okay, so this is just another visualization of that same function. The last thing I want to do here is make sure that we understand what the domain and range are. So again, this is kind of an unusual function. It's not defined as like a y equals or an f of x equals. It's just a set of inputs and a set of outputs. Okay, so for an unusual function like this, if I'm trying to describe the domain, that's the set of inputs, and the range, which is the set of outputs, it's really just going to be a set of numbers. Okay, so there's nothing fancy going on here. It's not all the numbers from 9 to 17, it's just these specific numbers, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, so I'm just going to use set notation. This is a, sorry, didn't draw very well on this, a curly brace. Okay, so that's the way we talk about a set of numbers. And I'm just going to write all these numbers that show up. Now again, this is fairly unusual in the sense that most of the time it's not just going to be a set of individual numbers. If we have one of those more normal functions like y equals 3x plus 2, it would be like all the numbers. So maybe it would include something between 9 and 10, like 9.001 or 9.002. So we'll learn a little bit later how to write things that it's not just a set of some specific few numbers. But for right now, because it's just these particular inputs, that's my domain. And my range is the set of outputs. So 42, 46, 50, 55, 59, 61, 61, 60, 57. Now I do want to take a second to clean up this range. When I'm writing a set of numbers, there's no need to write any number more than once. So you'll notice this temperature 61 degrees shows up twice. I don't need to write that twice. I should get rid of that one. This is the more simplified way of writing that range. Okay, let's see if any other numbers repeat. Nope, that was the only one. So just something to keep in mind when you have a set notation. If any numbers repeat, you shouldn't write them more than once, just write them one time. So that's my domain, or in other words, my set of inputs. That's my range, my set of outputs.